welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed, and today we are in the Socrates and Jesus, a Dialogue on Heaven book. It is a banger. It's such a banger. Now, recently we have been reviewing what we've been reading, and we've come to an interesting discovery, the significance of the golden analogy. And we've come across the significance of the golden analogy when we've reached that part in the text. We are a golden ratio into the text. There is a turning point in the characters, in the story. And in reviewing what we've come to from the text, we've come to a series of conclusions about different states of mind, puzzles about states of mind as well, on a map that is entirely based on reason and understanding, using the building blocks of understanding that we've discovered in the text and are being used in the text. So, using the text to discover the building blocks of understanding and using that to outline 5 states of mind human beings go through, and how we can rank them hierarchically to represent stages of development or decline, so that we can go through them ourselves to reach our goal, our highest spiritual goals, our evolutionary goals, the meaning of life goals, to develop a way of being we call understanding, which opens us up to an experience of knowledge, and putting the two together, we can develop true excellence and reach the highest state of mind, the state of the self. Know thyself. And as we saw in the text, without know thyself, your system is empty. Because know thyself is the fundamental tenet behind philosophy. So, the way of being of understanding, the state of enlightenment we call knowledge, and beyond that, its cause, the state of the self. There is the state, so those are the 3 logos-based states of mind: intelligible states of mind, good states of mind, beneficial states of mind, can be a positive influence in the world states of mind. But then we have the negative states of mind, belief-based cognition, and in turn, which is characterized by an internal state of conflict, a desire for inflicting harm or sadism, and creating conflict externally as well. Internal and external conflict, and the desire for that, because there's no state of mind attached to being a believer, so there has to be a compensation for what they can do to show that they are a good believer. Sadism, which makes sense of a puzzle that a lot of people have had, a lot of people who are looking at the state of the world and have been looking at the state of the world for a while and realize, for all the people in power, all the politicians, all the billionaires, all the kings and clergy, why is cruelty the point? Why is it the desire to hurt people, hurt children, starve children, murder people? It's because they are in that 4th state of mind, below understanding, unintelligible, called belief, belief-based cognition. We saw the 5th state of mind, leaving belief-based group thinking without moving upwards, a massive difference. Without what's needed to make statements that are general, lacking what you need to make general statements, retreating into the apparent safety of just making particular opinions. A disconnection. So we saw that these 5 states of mind are characterized by a relationship between these self-logos pairs. The building blocks of understanding, whole, part, same, different. What's the relationship between these two elements that always come together in experience? Well, the bottom one, the mass of difference, we call strict dualism. They are disconnected. You can never reach a whole. You can never find a paradigm. You can never have an understanding of true justice or true beauty. So whatever the heck. The modern Democrats. A conflict between whole and part, same and different, like and unlike, limit and unlimited, etc. A conflict between the elements of consciousness, the pair elements of consciousness, the pair elements of the logos. That's what it means to be a believer, to be in conflict with the elements within mind. Supposedly the same, but you feel different. You're promised to be a whole, but you really feel like you're a part. You have to take on limits. You can't watch Harry Potter. You can only marry a Mormon person. You can only read Mormon books. You have to wear the special Mormon underwear. All of these limitations, but your soul seeks freedom. Conflict. Internally and creating conflict externally in the world. Understanding. An intelligent, caring connection between the two, through which we get providence and beneficial functioning. A state of being of the whole while functioning ideally in the parts, and so on. That's the goal state of evolution. Now, to be in the whole completely, fully, all at once, or out of time, while understanding is to be functioning ideally in time, or to be participating through the logos in time, as the book is a fantastic example. Whole, part. Jesus, says Socrates to Jesus, people have to speak about the whole of us and the parts. How are we the same? How are we different? So on, through the text, demonstrating understanding as the whole of the text, but also in every part. How are believers a part of a whole? How are believers limited and unlimited? How are they the same and different? So even in the parts of the text. So, well, that's understanding, functioning ideally through intelligibility or the logos in time. To have the logos all at once, or mind minding mind, ousia, is out of time. That's knowledge, or the brilliant light of being, which has been a subject of this text a lot, talked about a lot. And of course, beyond that, the significance of understanding that experience has been talked about in the text. The tragedy that follows if you use your beliefs to make sense of that experience is the story of Jesus, the narrative that we hear about from the Gospel of Mark. The tragic, pathetic hero's tale. But if we have done our work on discovering and removing our unsuspected false beliefs, or our known false beliefs, Abrahamic religions, and we decide to make sense of that knowledge experience of the logos out of time all at once as pure being through understanding, we can go on to our final goal, our true destination, the state of the self. And we're wondering about what that state is in the text. Can't be experience if it's the cause of experience. So 5 states of being that we can move through, that we can recognize human beings through, and we can see as the fundamental cause of human problems or human excellence. Understood with pure understanding. We talked about so we had a model that represents that on the board last time. We have the model for all of human fundamental activities, our evolution, our purpose, how we respond to new truth, how we can understand problems, how we relate to our fellow man, and how much we see the value and significance of dreams is a big one. We put that on a continuum between belief-based thinking, conflict, internal conflict of the logos, and external conflict, and addiction to the sadist, addiction to suffering and causing conflict, sadism, belief-based thinking, and on the other side, understanding-based thinking. The further you are towards understanding, the more evolved you are, the more of a sage you are. On the other side, the more of a zombie you are, the more of a caveman you are, the more of a savage you are. For all of those particular human activities. So, while the models of the logos or states of mind are universally applicable, using pure reason, we call that a homogeneous model. All of these specific human activities that we're interested in, we call a heterogeneous. That can be all placed on that scale. How much do you see the value of dreams? The more you're into understanding, the more you'll see the value of it. The further you are in belief-based thinking, the more you'll believe people who want you to dismiss your own individual seeing and growth, dismiss your dreams. And third, we have a model that can unite the heterogeneous, the homogeneous, and the heterogeneous, the universal and the specifics analogy, giving us ultimately the golden analogy, which is incommensurate, which means every stage of development along the analogy of the golden analogy is a jump. Incommensurate. Which is significant because in our homogeneous model, every stage of being or state of mind is different. And in the heterogeneous model, or our transition from belief to understanding, ultimately there needs to be a jump at the end. You can learn about understanding while holding your beliefs a lot, a medium amount, a little bit, but eventually you have to drop belief-based cognition and fully jump into a new way of being, a new state of self. Love of understanding, philodianoia, is a jump. This is a continuum in our development, but there's a jump at the end. Equally so for all of those states of mind, there's a jump. So, interesting. Our three models are culminating in the significance of the golden analogy, the jump of human evolution and development that has come up at a golden analogy section of the text we're reading. Isn't that neat? Speaking of reading, let's see where the book goes. Okismogi. So here we are, 38.2% of the way through the text, thereabouts. Golden analogy. I think my milk's gone a bit bad. And my coffee. So there is a turning point in the drama. We're about 90, aren't we? Where Jesus has been following along with the significance of understanding to here. Okay, bring in our characters. Let's start here. Socrates. Your question raises one that we often reflect on. Okay, so what's the question? Let's go back a bit. So, modern Christianity are Pauline Jews. Modern Christians believe the fundamental tenets that aren't from Jesus but are from Paul. And Paul wanted to create a more inclusive Judaism that brings together the circumcised and those circumcised in the spirit. And Socrates says that all of mankind would become Pauline Jews. Pauline Jews, modern Christianity. Again, denying everything Jesus said. So, significant. To ignore these things. So, by the way, the things that Paul talked about, that are the arrest, the trial, the crucifixion, and the resurrection, not in the Gospel of Thomas. One of the books burned by the church, but written by someone closer to Jesus than Paul, obviously, his twin, Thomas. His brother. So, did they happen and Thomas just forgot about them or decided not to write them, or did they just not happen? Was it just all crap made up? Socrates says, we reflect on that. Thomas's book and the Gospels present extremely different views of your work, Jesus. How do you understand the differences? Okay, obviously in writing his work, he singled out what he regarded as true about my ministry, and what he thought didn't happen, he ignored. So he didn't think that those things that we get told about the arrest, trial, crucifixion, and clearly the resurrection as well, didn't happen. Okay? And also, Thomas, says Socrates, ignored Paul's claim that Jesus is the only Son of God, fundamental to Christianity. Not there, made up by Paul. Then I come to one conclusion. If none of the Gnostic authors, nor the Gospel of Mark, assign you the title, the only Son of God, so then while the Jesus of Mark rejects the teachings of Paul, he still includes some of the core beliefs about the Abrahamic tradition. However, in Mark's account, your last words mean there was no saving God because he rejected the model of sacrifice. The core belief of your tradition, what's the core belief of the Abrahamic religions that are popular in our world? Abraham's willingness to do as God commanded. Blind, stupid, harmful obedience in authority was the beginning for the model of sacrifice. Okay, and then we go into the story about, let's review this. Let's bring in the characters. Yes, says Jesus, in a way it was the beginning of the model of sacrifice, but in another way not. The model such believers act out can be easily perceived. Look closely at the roots of their teachings, and you'll surface their problematic model. How did the God of Abraham choose those that would be his people? They are the ones following the model of Abraham. As Abraham feared not obeying the commands of his God, so that he was willing to sacrifice his first son, so too his followers obey his laws and become his people. So fear, obedience, killing what you love, killing what's important because Sky Daddy says so. That's the first, that's the root, that's the Abraham, the Abrahamic cause, the fundamental cause, the fundamental way of being upon which these Abrahamic religions are based. So as Abraham feared not obeying the commands of God, so too his followers today fear not obeying the laws and become Jews, Muslims, and Christians. So pleased was God with Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his son, he formed a clan worthy fierce believers from Abraham's descendants. For these are called the chosen people, and they were given the right to conquer and possess the land of others, starve those Palestinian children. Oh, it's the right. Terrible shit. But we can still understand it. It's important that we understand it, where it comes from. The right to conquer and possess the land of others. They have been told that their God will curse those who curse them, and those they bless, he will bless. So if they said, oh, okay, we like the Americans who give us money, then God will bless the Americans. We don't like these Palestinians, well, God will curse them. It's their fault that we are starving them to death and bombing them to death. So, absolute worst in human functioning, but has a cause. That fourth state of mind, belief-based functioning, and a specific kind of belief that underlies the main Abrahamic religions. This crap. God is your attack dog, or in other words, my personal beliefs I've never reflected on, I'm going to pretend they are universal laws. Now that's not uncommon. If you've ever watched a TV show and you hear the word respect, it's the same game. I don't like you wearing red shoes, but instead of saying I don't like it, I'm going to pretend my personal opinions are universal truths, and I'll say that's disrespectful that you wear red shoes, which is stupid and violent, and will be the cause of violence in the show. Hear the word respect, count to 10, I guarantee there'll be a fight. It's lazy writing. But it's the essence of religion. My personal, stupid, fucking harmful bullshit beliefs are not just my own, they are sanctified, to quote the text. God says so. Human beings are really something, aren't they? So long as they are operating through belief. Terrible shit. So, God will curse those who curse them, and he'll bless the ones that they decide that they are blessed worthy. So God becomes a servant to his people. So this God announced he would do unto others what others do to them. This God becomes, notice that the Jewish people are doing genocide that happened to them in their past. Are they invoking the right to do so because their God does what they want? Yes, exactly. That's the essence of the suffering that we're facing. Isn't this book a banger? 2 paragraphs. That's it. Two paragraphs. End to the Palestinian genocide by addressing its cause. Book's a banger. So the God becomes his people's ally and pours wrath upon their enemies. This God becomes a people's God whose highest vision is that they become the rulers. They get to do the things and own all the stuffs. That's modern religion. That is religion. Sanctifying of beliefs. And beliefs are conflict of rationality. What they act out is not their will, but only what is consistent with Abraham's fearful legacy of a wrathful God. If you are a Jew or any version of Christianity, Judaism, or Muslim, then you are not free to do your own thing. We've already seen that. You have to accept limits. But what you act out in your life is not your own will. It's just the legacy of Abraham and his fear of a punishing God. Jesus says, this is the turning point. Jesus, it's likely that here you will see a loss of freedom, but I see a conformity to divine rule. To be willing to stay within those limits is to be a child of God. This is the turning point. Jesus has been following along with understanding up until here. Maybe he was triggered by having an understanding of the tradition he grew up in. And seeing how fucking terrible and absurd it is might challenge his own dear mummy and daddy who raised him this way. You're not born believing in Abraham's problem. You have to learn it from childhood, which means your teachers.
This guy had to admit that the people in his life who helped convince him to be a conservative in the first place, parents, clergy, other authority figures, were wrong. Not only was wrong, but lied to him, and that he fell for it. All of that takes so much courage and character.
That's the essence of the issue. And upon realizing that, often people get triggered and become a savage. Their savageness comes out. To be fiercely loyal to their harmful beliefs, rather than challenge the images of their loved ones who fed them this horseshit. But it's something that we need to do as a species. As individuals and as a race, we need to have the courage and the character to tell the truth about our early teachers and drop this root cause of such terrible, terrible injustice and suffering in the world. I don't know if everyone will be able to do it, but let's hope enough good people out there are willing to. So Jesus, I don't say it's losing freedom. I say it's conformity to divine rule and to be a child of God. I see, says Socrates. Then that accepting the creed, it imposes limits on what can be questioned. One pays a bitter price for believing truth can be reached by sanctifying the cave of belief. It's not just what I want, it's disrespectful, bro. Fight in a movie. It's not just what I want, God says so, says the clergy. It's not that I get to tell you what to do, God says I do, says kings. Billionaires, similar. It's not that I get to have all the money and power, it's because I'm better. God picked me, I pulled myself up from my bootstraps. Okay. What's the cause of what's used to justify all human injustice? Sanctifying the shadows in the cave of belief. That's it. So there's one sentence. This book is filled with one sentence bangers. Put this on a bumper sticker. We pay a bitter price for believing truth can be reached by sanctifying the shadows in the cave of belief. You can even make the first half of that sentence your own. The justification for the worst human atrocities is always sanctifying the shadows in the cave of belief. Kings and clergy and all the genociders and murderers and horrible people in the world justify their injustice by sanctifying the shadows in the cave of belief. Doing so is to celebrate blindness as if it were sight. Now put that on the other side of, next to it, or on the other side of the fridge magnet, or the other side of the throw pillow. To explain, to demonstrate what we just defined most aptly and succinctly, to give a demonstration is this metaphor, to celebrate blindness as if it were sight. Right. All of the Trump sycophants, all of the Netanyahu sycophants, all of the Hitler sycophants, all of the Putin sycophants, all of them, all of the people who follow the similar, fascists on YouTube, the Peterson sycophants, the Joe Rogan sphere people, Republicans, the right wing. There is no right wing, it's just this. What are they doing? Why are they so easy to be made fun of on comedy shows? Because they are celebrating blindness as if it were sight. The most basic, fundamental thing for being a human, to see. Seeing in the physical world, or to see truth and understanding. And its opposite, blindness. That's what belief is. Belief causes problems, understanding solves problems. Belief has to reject personal development and understanding to stay stagnant. Understanding is what you need to evolve and reach your highest goals. Anyone who says, just believe me, bro, is celebrating blindness as if it were sight. You can't have a more succinct analogy. Speaking of sight, imagine how clearly the author of this book sees. To summarize all human suffering and problems in that sentence, in that analogy. Book's a banger. Thus, in this way, they sacrifice any meaningful exploration of the elements of theology or metaphysics. And there's the opposite. If you don't celebrate, sanctify blindness as if it were sight, belief, the shadows in the cave of belief for the outside real world, what are you doing? Philosophy. You are using your mind to understand, to explore the aspects of reality, being, beauty, understanding, truth, or meaningful exploration of the elements of metaphysics. If you want to call being God, you can call it theology too. So this paragraph, brilliantly written. The first principle that gives rise to the rest of it. What's the principle behind belief and religion? Imposing limits on what can be questioned. Therefore, definition, you pay a bitter price for believing truth can be reached by sanctifying the shadows of belief, of the cave of belief. Demonstration or example, that's just like celebrating blindness as if it were sight. What are you sacrificing? The vision? What are you cutting out? Any meaningful explorations of the elements of theology, the nature of the divine, or metaphysics, the nature of reality. Therefore, conclusion, back to the start. The start began with imposing a limit. Therefore, from that exploration, putting limits on the mind is to sacrifice the mind. There's our synthesis. And how does it relate to what we're talking about? If this is common to the Abrahamic religions, then they are in conflict with understanding, reason, and the use of the intellect or mind. What a perfectly crafted, brilliant, meaningful paragraph. The artistry, the harmony, the order, the journey you go on, but so complete. What a fucking brilliantly written paragraph. All Abrahamic religions are in conflict with understanding, reason, and the use of the intellect or mind. How important is that paragraph to humankind, to our whole species, to every single culture on this planet? Brilliant. So good. Socrates comes back. The reduction of God to serve and function as a servant for his people is no longer to have a God. Notice then that Marx Jesus hoped to force God's hand and save him from the cross. And in doing so, his followers would become another people, another tribe of chosen people. Paul's theme saved this idea by the belief in your resurrection. So Mark tried to show us how stupid this way of thinking is. God's your little attack dog. Dog's your servant. All your dumb opinions are God's opinions. Who you don't like, God doesn't like. Who you like, God likes. And the highest vision of God for the cosmos is you get to have all the stuff on earth. You get to be king. We're the chosen people. We get the land and we get all the stuffs. That's so stupid. And the story of Jesus is in Mark is the one that we, were told growing up is supposed to put an end to that. Jesus tried to use God as his attack dog. I had this light experience. I didn't challenge my Jewish beliefs. So I'm the new son of David. I'm the new chosen one. I get to be king. And look, I'm going to make God make it so. And it didn't work. It's supposed to show you that it's stupid. That's the story of Jesus. It's supposed to show you the absurdity and it's not real. Mark tried to save it by... Paul tried to save that, flip it on its head by saying, oh yes, but magic happened at the end. He rose from the dead, don't you know? No, not in the story. We know that. Well, it's accepted that there's no resurrection. Threw it on. And then he realized that he didn't realize, and then the tragedy of this person, he didn't even realize that his own demise was his own fault. And then Paul came along and gave an epilogue. But also, magic happened and Poochie returned to his home planet. Simpsons reference. Jesus magicked his way and became winner after all. Imagine that. Imagine watching some movie. Imagine watching Air Bud, where the good guys with Air Bud on the team win the basketball game, and then the movie ends, and then there's a end credit scene where the bad guys say, but then magic happened and the bad guys won the basketball game, and Air Bud was put to sleep. That's how stupid the story is. At the end of the Star Wars. And then Luke Skywalker won and harmony was restored to the universe. And then post-credit scene, but then magic happened and then Darth Vader became king after all. So stupid. Okay. So Paul tried to save the idea of belief, the ideal of sacrifice of having God as your attack dog, by the belief in resurrection. But what is this but the sacrifice of the fullest scope of the mind for membership in a clan that is protected by God? So now we have a new definition of Abrahamic religions. Sacrifice of the fullest scope of the mind for membership in a clan that's supposedly protected by God. By the way, does that define every family way of being? Every pathologos? You have to sacrifice membership in a clan? Does every family think their family is right? Does every kid think their parents are actually the wise, loving ones? But would never apply the idea of love or wisdom or truth to the people across the street, or the next door neighbors, or anyone else on the planet. That's our evolutionary byproduct. Blind, stupid loyalty to tribe leader when we were cavemen without the ability to think allowed our species these people to survive, because they wouldn't be venturing out of the cave and getting eaten by saber-toothed tigers. We are still affected by it. How can we buy such irrational horseshit? The magic of the resurrection added by... We know it was added. The absurdity of this lineage of Abraham's stupidity and fear of a wrathful God. It is completely fucking stupid. Insanely stupid. How do we do it? Well, we saw earlier that leaving the fourth state, if you've got the one self, knowledge, understanding as states of being in our model, know thyself, the self as ultimate reality, state of the self, grasping the oneness or the logos, the intelligible oneness all at once, timelessly, is the second state. That's knowledge, that's the brilliant light of being. A third state of being that we can have, grasping the intelligibility or consciousness in time, that's understanding, that's the logos and dialectic. And then our irrational, void of the logos, be believers, be in conflict between the parts of understanding, fourth state of mind. But we talked about what happens if you leave that fourth without philosophical midwifery to find the origin of why you accepted this, and without mastering the dialectic in the reading we're doing to move up from 4 to 3. If you leave but go down from 4 to 5, you are left as a mass of difference with no paradigm or model. Strict dualism. The Ghostbusters symbol. Ghostbusters symbol here, and the line goes between. No ghosts. Or no connection between whole and part, between same and different, between timeless and in time. Ghostbusters symbol. And we say, oh, a good example of that is the modern liberals or Democrats. They never say there's a paradigm that we must insist. Hey, medicine, there is a paradigm of the human body. You can't be a doctor and say, actually, I think humans are only supposed to have one arm. No, not one doctor can have that model. But I believe because I have religion. I'm a believer. You lose your license immediately. Why then, in politics, why do the left or the Democrats, who supposedly caring, the Republicans are just this, the right wing is just this. They do not even pretend to care for the people. Like, yeah, we want to do harm. We're in conflict. But you're in conflict too because you're Abrahamic. So, I'm just like your daddy. The devil you know. Are we able to do harm to our enemies? The people who are supposed to be rational, why do they not insist on a paradigm or model as we do in medicine, as we do in every other profession? Because they've left this conflict of belief and groups defined by a limiting belief without moving upwards. They haven't learnt understanding. They haven't learnt the dialectic. The dialectic is needed to reach the true paradigm, knowledge, and it's needed to address the cause of why you were a believer in the first place. If you haven't addressed the cause of a problem, you haven't solved the problem. And if you haven't fixed it with put in what is actually supposed to be there, then you haven't fixed the problem. They don't have either. So a true political party, the only true political party, would be the Logos Party, the Philodianoia Party, by definition. Because you need this for justice and beauty and benefit. So too, in our evolution, we still, even if we have left the caveman days and we have reason, we still have gone this way. We still have the byproducts. We still have the influence. Leaving this group, you still have the influence. What's belief? Rejection of ousia, self-reflection. Rejection of the logos, understanding. You still haven't got that back. That's the fundamental tenet of every religion or any belief, pathologos. Equally so, we still have the byproducts functioning in our species from caveman days. It's no longer useful. Blind obedience to cave leader. Everything from inside cave good. Everything different to cave is bad. Immigrants are bad. Women are bad. Other people are bad. People with different color skin are bad. Everything is bad. That's not my house. My mummy and daddy. It's a byproduct of caveman days. We need to address our roots. Collectively, by addressing the desire for this, caveman thinking, savage thinking, and individually, our own individual pathologos. So, what is the game? We sacrifice our mind for membership in a clan, caveman clan. And the marketing is, oh, but God loves you and not them. God will protect you when the end times come, but not them. And you get to hate on them, so you get to feel like a Noah by harming people. Sadism. Sanctifying sadism as what it means to be a Noah. That's the savagery of human beings because we have not addressed our roots that still influence us. Jesus. I see that you use the idea of limit frequently, Socrates, and so do we, because we've been doing diagrams, Jesus. We're not just believing Socrates, we've been doing diagrams. This idea of limit is one of a set that you can use to understand dualists, believers, understanders, knowers, and those completed their journey to know the self. So yes, we recognize he uses the idea of limit often too. Because we are reading properly, Jesus. We're not just believing him. I see you use the idea of limit frequently, Socrates. Clearly you are saying, are you not, that while those who become a follower of Abraham gain an identity and power, they do so at the cost of the higher functions of the mind. Yes. Follow that Abraham dude, Muslim, Jew, Christian, and all the varieties of. Yes. Sacrifice your mind. You call that a necessary limit to their being. This is quite a claim. How do you intend to defend it? If you have reasons, I would like to hear them. Yes, true it is, because it will take several steps in reasoning to realize the grounds for my making that claim. Good for us, so we can follow it and make it our own. Again, difference between belief and understanding. We're following the steps, seeing it. I would appreciate it if you were to take me through those steps, Socrates. Among groups of people, is it not true that there are some who have created spiritual systems that depend on their God's will to direct them in everything they do? And by contrast, there are others that, while they also include the idea of God in their spiritual system, they depend on their own teachings and efforts to direct them in everything they think and do. Yes, I can see why you say that. From this separation into these two groups, we can say that the first group is other than the second, can we not? Or that they are other than the others. Ooh. Okay, alarm bells. The way of being of understanding is the dialectic. That's how you think and reason and write books and stuff. And have conversations, understand dreams. It's the skill. The skill in reading, going from a question, collecting the right opinions, and then the skill is understanding. That's the dialectic. Equally so when you're removing your false beliefs, collect the false opinions, the inner critic and all that stuff, negative thoughts and feelings, blocks. But you have to engage in philosophical midwifery to resolve the problem. That's the skill. Well, we know that the dialectic has 4 parts. Definition, demonstration, division, conclusion. And conclusion has a synthesis and analysis. Self to self, definition. Self to others, demonstration. Others to others is that third category of understanding. So what? So, if we see Socrates, who is a master of the dialectic, someone who's gone through this journey, completed their work, reached that first highest state of self, he's saying other than the others, he's telling us something. He's giving us a clue. Other than the others. The first group is other than the second. Yes, I see that, says Jesus. What separates these others from the others is that they have a different idea of how to relate to their God, since in the first group, they must obey and serve the will and interests of the guy that claims to speak for God. Do what Trump tells you to do what Netanyahu tells you to do, etc. Oh, I say that because they don't actually talk to God. They listen to their preacher or the dear leader. They must obey and serve the will and interest of their God. This idea is one of master and servant. And since to serve their God, they must conquer lands and subject all to the will of their God. That means that they sacrifice their own goals and interests for the sake of the whole, of which they are parts. Sacrifice for king and country. Be selfless, not selfish. Of course, we've talked about those 2 words. It's a false dichotomy. It's not selfish or selfless. It's self-full or self-empty. Selfless is supposed to be good. You sacrifice all your own self-goals to be a slave. But selfish implies that you don't care about meeting your needs in harmony with others. It's often meant as cruel or mean. So we replace it with self-full and self-empty if you recognize that the desire to help others is one of your own self-needs too. That's a talk for another day. Sacrifice their own goals and interests for the sake of the whole, of which they are just parts. Again, says Jesus, I can see where you are going. And it does sound like a master-slave relationship. And if so, they must hide that from themselves. Each individual within this group uses their mind only within the limits of what is commanded by their God. And they consider all else secondary. All else must be ignored and considered to be without merit. Ever tried to talk to some of these people who have been brainwashed? They get furious after a while because they're engaged in reasoning and thinking for themselves. And that's supposed to be without merit. They're supposed to just do as they are commanded. That's the limit. And they're commanded to proselytize, conquer the minds and the lands of others. Turn others into children of Abraham. That weirdo freak. Or Pauline Jews. That another weirdo freak. Notice, it's only weirdo freaks that want this. Good people will never demand belief or faith. Good people will never say, give up your own self-goals. Do not understand. Never ever. That's why there's no extreme left. The only people who talk about an extreme left are ignorant. Extreme left, or would be Socrates. Understand, help everyone. That's not extreme, that's just rational. The right is just fascist. By definition, they are belief. They sanctify belief. They are children of Abraham. See how simple this book makes everything? Because it's so clear. So, each individual within this group uses their mind only within the limits of what's commanded by their God, and they consider all else secondary. All else can be ignored and considered to be without merit. Yes, that does seem to follow. Then these followers share a commonness with each other and know that they differ from that other group. So followers have a sameness with each other. And they differ from the other group, who seek direction of their spiritual path within themselves and do so through the use of the mind. So being spiritual doesn't mean being a blind, stupid, sadistic slave, a child of Abraham. It means, hey, welcome, big-headed. Yes, find a link to the text below. And I have heard somebody say that if you get a special add-on to your web browser, you might even be able to download the text that you can only borrow on archive. But I don't know if that's true. I'm just telling you what I heard. Of course, you could buy the hard copy too if you want. Support the publisher. It's a banger. It's worth having. So, Jesus is saying they differ from the other group because they seek their spiritual path within themselves and do so through the use of the mind. Cool. They must stand alone from those who use the mind to know the mind. So what are we doing? Using the mind to know the mind. Otherwise, they would abandon their God and seek to follow the command of know thyself. What's for philosophy? Using the mind to know the mind. What's that? Following the command to know the self. Thyself. So there's another bumper sticker. They must remain within their self-imposed limits and know that even among others in their group, they have betrayed their self to follow their God's will. So they know that they've betrayed themselves. Even if they all are cheering loudly at the megachurch, they know. They are in conflict. It's a collective lie, they know. Especially those evangelistic ones where they speak in tongues and they faint if the guy touches you. Malaka, 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 Jesus and your Jesus names and the devil be gone. And they go, what? And they fall down. They know they're just mucking around. They know they're lying. That's the internal conflict. They have to remain within these limits, but they know, even that among their group, they have betrayed their self to follow God's will. That's the internal conflict between within the soul of the believer. They won't say it. They're not allowed to. That's one of the limits. Sometimes the priest will play with poisonous snakes while chanting in tongues. Yeah, they die. They get bitten and die. But they have to pretend. So, in relation to... Oh, this is Jesus. In relation to each other... Oh, this is supposed to be Socrates. Okay. Okay, I can't fix that. They share a commonness with each other and know that they differ from that other group who seek the direction of their spiritual path within themselves and do so through the use of the mind. They must stand alone from those who use the mind to know the mind. Otherwise, they would abandon their God, and they would seek to follow the command, know thyself. They must remain within their self-imposed limits and know that even among others of their group, they have betrayed their self to follow their God's will. So, two other from others. They are other from others who are rational, following their spiritual path within themselves by the use of the mind to know the mind and know the self. That's philosophy in one long sentence. They're other from that, but even within their group, they're other from others. They look around and they know they're different. They know they're all lying. They know that they have abandoned themselves, betrayed the self. So it seems like this other of others, this third section of the dialectic, seems to be Let's put the 5 states of mind we have on the board so far. So far we have states of mind or ways of being. So far we have the top one, which is state of self or know thyself. We have the second one, which is the grasp the logos as a oneness out of time or eternal. Grasp the eternal, which we call knowledge, or experienced as the brilliant light of being. You have the third, to follow and unify the logos in time, understanding, love and logos, philodianoia, masterful or mastery. Let's just say using. Use of the dialectic. Now, these are the intelligible or logos. These are logos, intelligible. Ousia, the self-reflection and logos in these, intelligible. Self states. Then we have the irrational, the unintelligible ones. Conflict. Between rationality or logos. Pairs. Conflict within soul. Conflict and harm in functioning. Sadism. Power to harm taken as feeling of knowing, which is sadism. Which is sadism. This is a belief. And below that, disconnection. Between logos, elements, a mass of difference. No ideal. That down here actually. no ideal or paradigm modern Democrats. No ideal or paradigm, massive difference, or strict. Dualists. So, these are the 5 states of minds we've got from the book. 3 are states of excellence or states of self. 2 are irrational and harmful. 1 causes harm, 1 creates the conditions for harm. If you don't have a political party that actually is insisting on a universal model that will always be true and always benefit, then you are creating the conditions for the believers who take their fascism or belief-based thinking, desire to be cruel and exploit. You are creating the conditions for them to manipulate people, to buy all the news networks, lie to people, manipulate people to vote for Daddy Trump or Daddy Yahoo or Daddy Putin, and play out the implications of their belief-based cognition. Yep, it's called reading. It's in the book. We're reading by taking notes as we read, looking not only to what is being said, but what is the structure of thought behind the thinkers too. If you do that, you can solve the puzzles. You're not being passive. You're not being baby-fed. It's not like church. Jesus says do this, and then Jesus says give me the money, and then Jesus says do this, and wear these clothes. No. It's like solving a mystery of a video game. So these are the 5 states of mind. 3 intelligible, and 3 irrational and harmful. But what we're seeing now in the text is a clue that if you weren't doing this, you wouldn't see, and it would go over your head. But because we're learning to read, not interpret like you'd get taught at high school, we can recognize a new clue. What's the new clue? This Abrahamic thinking, belief-based thinking, conflict within, conflict without, sadism, the desire for inflicting suffering, cruelty is the point, as the internet meme, fascists and right-wingers and billionaires and all these people who could be doing good, they do harm. And it's like, why is cruelty the point? Why do these fascists enjoy debating with women that women shouldn't have rights? Why do they like hearing that taking away reproductive rights from women causes women to suffer and die? Why is cruelty the point? Because belief. Stage 4. No ousia, no logos. So this is the sacrificing of the mind to become a believer. That's the betrayal of your own self, your own mind, and your own way of being. That is, by definition, what it means to be a believer. None of this is opinion. This is just pure reasoning. Homogeneous, meaning it will apply to any culture, any religion, even religions that are yet to be invented, even other planets that have yet to be discovered. For all of time. It was true 1 million years ago, as it will be true 1 million years into the future. Just pure understanding. Therefore, the kind of learning we can take with us wherever we go. So what? So he's saying that another way of understanding this, not just through the logos terms, whole, part, same, other, and then being categorized by a conflict between them, representing the conflict within themselves, a conflict of, because if consciousness is logos expressed, to be held all at once in the highest state of mind, the second state, to be mastered through time in the dialectic as we're doing now, then one way of understanding the state of being is the relationship between those parts. Here is another way. Another way is as a category, others to others. To be a believer, you are other from these others. You are other from rational people who have not betrayed their self and their own being, who are pursuing their spiritual goals within themselves by use of the mind to know the mind and to know the self, which is this, the use of this functioning, understanding, to know the mind through the mind, that's knowledge or ousia, and to know the self here. So that's our development. So not only have we defined philosophy in a fantastic 2 sentences that you can put on your fridge, put on the front of your school notebooks, put on your not just on your bumper sticker, but on the front of your car, on your windscreen, up the top. You know how some people have words on the top of their windscreen? Put this. Put seek the direction of your spiritual path within yourself too. Use the mind to know the mind and to follow the command of knowing the self. Or use philodianoia, the love of logos, dialectic, to awaken the mind's capacity to know your mind and then to keep going to know the self. See, simple. Which of these 3 states of mind we've already identified as the intelligible, or the states of excellence, or the states of self. They have ousia and logos, the very things that are rejected from this. Therefore, it's other than this. Believers are other from this, this, and this. Other from others. And even within their group, you could be in a Mormon church chanting Kumbaya, or in some snake handling church speaking in tongues, and you'll look around and you'll realize, I'm different from all these people here. Yes, we all accept the same limits. We can't read Harry Potter, and we have to pretend to speak in tongues and all that crap. But I'm still not the same as them. And we can even say within yourself, you are other from yourself. You're other from another. Because you've betrayed yourself. You know it's a lie. You know that you can't prove Abrahamic religion. If you've looked into it a little bit, you know the Easter story was made up by Paul hundreds of years later by the church. And if you're familiar with the Gospel of Thomas, and that we've discovered in Egypt, the Gnostic text, there might even be a arrest, trial, and crucifixion. Why do I have to accept these limits? Other from another, yourself. So, what is also involved in reading? This is called an analogy. Once you realize there's one part on one side, and there's one part on another side. For example, you're playing Resident Evil, and on one side you have these paintings with pictures of people on them. But on the other side, you realize that, one of those paintings has the 2 eyes with a gem in them, and next to it is an open door. Then it's your job to piece the rest together. That means you have to figure out for yourself, by learning to read properly, that you need to find the blue gems to go into that painting, and you suspect it will open a door. The green gems to go into that painting's eyes, and that will open a door. That's just basic problem solving. That's called analogy, or expanding the analogy. So what? So if we've got one of the categories of the dialectic that perfectly summarizes what it means to be this state of being, a believer, the cause of problems in our world, now we can say this is the condition for problems, because if you're not insisting on a paradigm of that's universally true and beneficial, you're creating the conditions for fascism to exist. But this is the cause. Then where's the rest of the analogy? Well, we could guess that this would be other to self. This would be self to self, and this would be self to others, because these are the four categories of the dialectic. So far, we've been understanding the states of mind in terms of the self-logos terms within the dialectic, but it may also apply to the dialectic itself. And it should, because the hypothesis is the dialectic is the structure of intelligibility of everything. Understanding, it's the structure of understanding, dialectic. Pretty neat. So, but that raises some questions. The first one is, how do we understand following understanding as self to another? How do we understand grasping reality all at once as self to itself? How do we understand this massive difference, or the Ghostbusters symbol, disconnection, as others to self? And also, what about this fifth one? How often have we come across a set of four with a mysterious fifth sitting above? A bunch of times. Then what would be up here? And also, hey, if we make sense of what this one is, then maybe we can discover a mysterious fifth category of the dialectic that we can take back into our understanding of the dialectic. So not only do we solve it on one side, we might discover a puzzle that will help us solve it on the other side. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win-win-win-win-win.
It's a win-win-win-win.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win. It's a win-win.
Which means back to our model of the dialectic. Talk, 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 talk. Talk, 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 talk. Here we are. Definition, demonstration, division, conclusion. Self to itself, self to another, others to others, believers, others back to self, and maybe a mysterious higher term that we haven't got yet. So that we've discovered a new question. So what do? We put that in our question sack, in our mighty big sack of questions that go in our inventory, and we continue our quest.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
Pretty neat. They must remain within their self and... Oops, this is Socrates, actually. They stand alone from those who use the mind to know the mind. Otherwise, they would abandon their God and seek to follow the command to know thyself. They must remain within their self-imposed limits and know that even among others of their group, they have betrayed their self to follow their God's will. So, in relation to each other and within themselves, there we go, see? That within themselves thing was a hypothesis that we made as we were reflecting, because they've betrayed themselves. That seems like what we did was we saw other to other, and we expanded the analogy. They're other to others in that they're other to understanders. They're other to rational people. They're others to others in their group. They're all different. But because we read the word betrayed the self, we hypothesized that another version of other to other would be in relation within. There's a hypothesis we made, and within the next sentence we saw it come to light. That's reading. That's a buzz. That's, oh, I solved a puzzle. Isn't that neat? And it also speaks to why this book's a banger. That wouldn't work if it wasn't true. By simply expanding analogies rationally, we came to a hypothesis that the book has also come to. We came to the same conclusions. Meaning it's not a matter of opinion, it's just what happens if you use the mind to know the mind. That's why we read this book. It's true. It's not a belief or a theory, just reason. So we can come to the same conclusions. It's pretty neat. Let's keep reading. In relation to each other and within themselves. They know they have sacrificed themselves in obedience to their God. Among themselves, they experience this tension. Since they are like themselves and like each other, but on the other hand, they experience that they are unlike those members of that other system and suffer that loss, while also keeping it from one another. So we recognize like and unlike. These are building blocks of understanding, or selfers. The self-logos term, selfers. They are like, but they are in conflict within themselves because they are also unlike. They are conflict within towards others because they are like the others, but they are unlike people in other systems. They are like people within their system, but they are unlike because they also keep it from one another. They're not honest with each other. So in terms of self-seeking people, in terms of people within their group, and in terms of themselves, they are other from another. Or in conflict. So, what's the cause of conflict in the world? These guys. Or rather, this state of mind. A holdover from caveman times that we have yet to evolve out of. So therefore, we can conclude the meaning of life, the goal, the ethical and moral responsibility, and the purpose for every single person to be here is to move from this stage 4 as a state of mind or way of being to stage 3. That's the jump. Why? Because you can use stage 3 because it's the first stage and state of being, state of mind and being that has Usia and Logos, but it's also the beginning of actual spiritual progress. Beliefs are stagnant. You can't change your beliefs. It's always Jesus is Lord, or Muhammad is King, or Abraham is the one, or Joseph Smith has the best magical underpants, or Lord Zeno will take our thetans away. You can't change that. Stagnant and stupid and harmful and in conflict within yourself to others, and also in conflict with these good people. Notice, If you've ever come across a good person or a good streamer or someone on Twitch or YouTube or something that is actually intelligent and thoughtful and doing their best to solve human problems and reach human excellence, they will have haters, because there are a lot more believers than there are understanders. They are the haters. And they're stupid as well. Their comments are not funny or interesting or unique or creative. That's why the right wing only has one joke. Pronouns. My pronouns are I love America. And they only have one ethic. I want to see liberal tears. I don't care if the billionaires are taking away all my social services, but I want to see other people suffer. I want to see immigrants ripped from their families. I want to see liberal tears. Sadism. Caveman, savage, zombie sadism. You zombies enjoy eating brains of other people. There are some wonderful, wonderful human beings out there. They are rare because of this. Even the better people who are trying their best to come into a way of being of understanding still need to do midwifery. But they have haters. As someone who has grown up loving understanding in a culture very much characterized by sadism, Australian culture, tall poppy syndrome, celebrating the sort of the grossest ways of treating people as cool and hip, then I know for a fact how rare it is to find people like that. And if you come across them, they are rare gems. But they have haters, because this way of being, which is more common, believers, whether it be the Abrahamic beliefs or our pathologos belief that we all have, is in conflict with this. Which also represents the state of these people who are better, these good people. As they move towards understanding and fully embracing the dialectic and logos, they will have that part of themselves from childhood that they have not even suspected they still carry in conflict with themselves, diminishing their own value, diminishing their own worth, diminishing their own capabilities, or causing physical blocks, removing energy, causing pains or headaches or things like that, causing other physical difficulties. What we've done today is understood that internal conflict as good people try and move into better understanding the nature of self and reality, and reaching what they need, mastery that can be used to benefit themselves and the world. They will also experience this conflict of belief-based thinking, because we all get it. Thus, the need for dream analysis and midwifery. So that's pretty cool, that we can understand it. But again, even if you understand it, there is that jump. To fully leave this one is a jump. And then you have those states of excellence, being in the zone or juriki. And then higher states beyond that. So it's where the fun is. This is where the fun is. Belief is where the suffering is. But it does require a jump to try something new. You don't believe it, it has to work. It has to actually help you. But you do have to roll the dice. So they even keep it from one another, says Sock. I do think that what you said can be said. I do think that what you say can be said, says Jesus. Yes. Then, even though they accept this limitation, they still can function with a partial logos. Oi, that's interesting. Let's highlight that in a funny color. Put that in pink. And achieve everyday goals, which of course must be consistent with the demands of their God. Right? Their everyday goal can't be reading a Harry Potter book if they're some crazy Christian person who believes that magic is the devil or something. They must agree not to free themselves nor enter into the logos. Wow. You can have everyday goals. You can, you don't have to give all your money to the billionaire preacher. You can still, pay your rent and stuff, but you can't free yourself from religion and you can't enter into the logos. That's the big thing, because entering the logos is the states of rational development, 1, 2, and 3. That's entering into the logos. Following and unifying the logos in time, that's understanding. True love and logos. So they are free to master the everyday world. You can manipulate the world and cause bombs and war and scam for money and be a grifter. You can be a grifter and a Christian, and that's most preachers. That's the whole church, really. And ignore the furthermost reach of the mind. Do physical things, hurt people in the physical world, but ignore the mind. Or else they will lose what they have treasured the most. Group identity with their God. They participate in limit, while their own spirit is unlimited. There's the conflict again. Like and unlike, and now limit and unlimited. Fundamental building blocks of understanding. So far we've got a list of 6 pairs. And here are 2 of them. Their own spirit is unlimited, since it willingly plays whatever subordinate role is their fate. So you participate in the limit of belief, but your spirit is unlimited. There's the conflict. Because your spirit will go along. The spirit will be ruled by you. Will go along. Will diminish itself. Will play a subordinate role. Tragedy. Jesus. Now this is more difficult to agree with, but at this point I have nothing to oppose it. See? Conflict. Jesus just demonstrated what it means to be in conflict. He is unwilling to give up his limits, that this is a terrible way of being, to be in conflict with yourself, with others, with your soul, with your spirit. To only have partial goals in your life, a diminished life existence. Believers and religious people live a diminished existence. They can have some physical goals so long as they never awaken the mind and the meaning of their lives. They never enter the logos. And they still obey they're consistent with the demands of their God. They don't watch Harry Potter. Or they don't eat shellfish or something like that. Or they don't end the genocide in Palestine. Or they don't question Trump. Or they don't stop giving their money to the billionaire preacher. So, Jesus just demonstrated what we defined. We defined it with the self-logos terms, the building blocks of understanding. True for now, true for always, true for everyone, not opinion. It's just understanding. Fantastic, lots and lots of fun.
Where's the joy? Where's the whimsy? Where's the
And now we have a demonstration of what we defined. See, the dialectic goes through all of it. So we're seeing a thinking, not just in Socrates, but within the author himself. who is also, like Socrates, a master of the logos, someone who's gone through this. Difficult to agree with. Different from my beliefs. I can't just drop my limits, but I have nothing to oppose it. There's the conflict. No reason. In conflict with the mind. I got no reason to disagree with it, but I don't agree with it. See? Pretty good book, hey? Get the definition, you get a fun demonstration. Now we're breaking it down so we can see what's there to be seen. It's a mystery, it's a puzzle. But on your own time, you can read through the whole book that we've read so far and let it wash over you. Experience it as an experience. So long as you got this in the background. Like if you know nothing of classical music, then you might get bored at a symphony or something. But if you've done a lot of study and work on understanding music and things, it suddenly comes to life. If you watch the Super Bowl game, the biggest, hey, welcome Golden, how are you feeling today? The biggest, most expensive game in the world, the Super Bowl, but you know nothing of a quarterback or a fourth down or an offensive line, it would be the most stupid, boring, and I know this from personal experience, the stupidest, boringest garbage in the world. But people spend their like a year's salary just to go and watch this game. That's the difference of having the understanding with you as you experience it. So now that we've been breaking it down, you can download the PDF or borrow it. There's a link below, or buy the book. With the understanding, experience it. Because here, we've just got 2 of the 6 building blocks of understanding. Like and unlike. Limit and unlimited. To define what it means to be a believer. And to show we've already defined it as in conflict, but to show how big the conflict is, how it applies to others and themselves and people within their group. The conflict is within their spirit. Their spirit is in conflict with their desire to be a member of a group. We've got all this in that one paragraph. How amazing is that? We've defined the believers. We're playing out the implications of it. But then we get an example of it in one sentence. Jesus saying simply, it's difficult to agree with, but I have nothing to oppose it. You couldn't demonstrate what we've just defined, which is perhaps the most meaningful thing to understand in our current world. We've just laid it out in one paragraph. You couldn't demonstrate it more simply and eloquently and beautifully as that one sentence. And you couldn't have a more significant and meaningful character to say that sentence than Jesus goddamn Christ over here. That's how brilliant this book is. Beautiful, elegant, significant. It's a banger. Of all of the bangers that have ever banged, this one bangs the hardest and bangs the most. She bangs is the theme of this book by Ricky Martin. Hey, I'm great. How are you? See how much she bangs. Now, you can read it with that understanding in the background and have it wash over you. Experience that beauty as a sentence, just like you can experience a symphony, a line in a symphony, with the understanding of music behind you. Experience a single play on a fourth down. It happened like in an instant. But with all of the understanding you have of football and the whole season you've been following this team, that one pass could be super, super significant to you, that you're willing to pay a year's salary just to watch it in person. This is that. That's how good it is. So yeah, read through it after you've broken it down with me on the channel and feel what it's like to have this one sentence wash over you. My goodness. Anyway, let's keep reading. Now this is more difficult to agree with. What is? Even though they accept this limitation, they still function with a partial logos. That's the zombie. We say zombies because they have a partial logos. They can't talk, but they can say a little bit. Brains, brains. I want to eat brains. That's all they can say. Partial logos. They can reach goals, but only partial goals. Yes, like brains. Their goal is only brains. So for believers, it's only manipulate the physical world. Scam people for money. Whatever. But do not free yourself from your limits and do not enter the logos. Do not enter into a meaningful existence. Master the everyday world and ignore the furthermost reach of the mind. So, zombies. Even though they accept this limitation, they can still function with a partial logos and achieve everyday goals. Of course, they must be consistent with the demands of their God. They must agree not to free themselves, no limitlessness, nor enter the logos, no usia and logos. So they must master the everyday world. They are free to master the everyday world and ignore the furthermost reach of the mind, or else they will lose what they have treasured the most, group identity with their God. They participate in limit while their own spirit is unlimited. Why? Well, because their spirit willingly plays whatever subordinate role is their fate. Your spirit will go along with your ignorance, as is the power of belief. Jesus says, well, this is more difficult to agree with, but at this point I have nothing to oppose it. Conflict, limit of mind. And if one's way of being can be descend from one's model, well, there's a model behind our way of being. Then as the God of Abraham was willing to murder his son as a sacrifice to his God, so the followers of Abraham must be willing to murder others to fulfill the will of God. Okay? Ever wondered how come we have so much murder and war and genocide? Belief. Abrahamic religions in particular. Why? Oh, easy. There's just a root analogy behind the whole thing. What's the root analogy? Judaism, Muslims, Christians, and all the varieties of have as their root Abraham. What did Abraham do? There's our analogy, as the God of Abraham was willing to murder his son, part A, as a sacrifice to his God, part B, A is to B. We're reading here, pals, friends, buddies. So, that's our other thing of an analogy. As shepherd is to his sheep, so is king to his people. As the God of Abraham was willing to murder his son, because God says so. So the followers of Abraham, so the God of Abraham is to the followers of Abraham. So as Abraham, so his followers. As murdering his son, so do current Abrahamic people murder other human beings to death. Millions and millions and millions of people fucking murdered because of this one simple analogy. Isn't this book a banger? I've mentioned it's a banger before, I think. So here's the analogy. As Abraham murdered his son as a sacrifice to God, so the followers of Abraham, Muslims, Jews, and Christians are willing to murder others to fulfill the will of their God. We can also add that as one identifies with one's self-image, these followers of Abraham must act according to that image. And so they have a fixed way of being that limits and blocks their spiritual development. Okay, we started simple and now we're expanding it out to the conclusion. Why is there murder in the world? Abraham. An analogy to the story based on Abraham. Kill people because the boss says so. Okay, but as one identifies with a self-image, so now he's bringing in the universal nature of this. This may also apply to the pathologos. We all have a false image of ourselves. As a new analogy, as every human being, or people who haven't gone through dream analysis and midwifery yet, as one who identifies with the self-image, so too, so we're missing the so, but it's implied here, so we'll put this in pink for the implied so. As one identifies the self with one's self-image, so too these followers of Abraham act according to their own self-image. What's the image? The image of Abraham. Kill what you most love, your son, your mind, your being, your humanity, your empathy, your care for your fellow man, and the species itself. Bring Armageddon. That's the image that they act according to. As Abraham sacrificed what's most meaningful, so too must they murder whoever they're told to do, to murder. And so they have a fixed way of being, which would imply if midwifery to solve human problems requires philosophical midwifery to find the underlying image, number one, and the underlying analogy that's playing out in our present. Our past is to our present. If this happened when I was a kid, it's going to happen now. So too, the Abrahamics have their false analogy, kill your son, and their image, the image of Abraham is their underlying false image of what it means to have a God. And therefore they have a fixed way of being, as human beings have a fixed way of being with the pathologos. And that fixed way of being limits and blocks our spiritual development. So now we are seeing the cause of murder in our world, Abraham, a false analogy. Abraham killing his son is you killing non-believers because God said so. A false image, the image of Abraham, the fiercely stupid and violent believer, chosen one of God. But also, even deeper than that, is the pathologos. Because the pathologos is the human principle of all problems. All problems come down to a false image and analogy. As our past experience with our parents was in our origin scene, so too analogously is our present, keeping us chained to our future, fate, tragedy. That is because the underlying conclusion at our origin scene was an image. And our false image of ourselves dictates our way of being. That's why we're stuck in our problems. That same principle is behind Abrahamic religions. There has to be, so one of the questions asked earlier in the text was, if this is so obviously bad and wrong and inhumane and stupid and proven to be wrong, all this stuff has been proven to be wrong, there was no resurrection. Everyone knows there's no resurrection, but why do Christians still believe in Easter? Jesus rising from the dead? If Paul was the only one who said Jesus was the Son of God, how come they still believe it? And if Paul said that the Armageddon was going to come in his lifetime, how come the Christians are still seeking to destroy the world and bring about the end of the apocalypse? Why are they so fucking stupid? Was the question in the text. Why are they so immune from simple, basic evidence and reason? Even when it goes against everything about what it means to be good and decent? Why are we so stupid and savage? Is the question that Socrates asked earlier that we didn't answer. Here we have an answer. A possible hypothesis. The reason why so many people are Jews, Muslims, and Christians and varieties of, who are willing to murder people when their preacher says so or Daddy Trump says so, despite everything saying that that's a terrible and stupid thing, is because the same principle already exists as a condition. That's the pathologos. We are bound to a false image of ourselves that gives us a fixed way of being, and we act through that way of being, giving us a fixed, repeating cycle of problems, physical ailments, blocks, because all of those things in that fixed way of being limit and block our spiritual development, limit and block our logos, limit and block us moving from belief to understanding, limit and block us from moving from the irrational, savage ways of being 4 and 5 to 3, 2 and 1. The logos way of being, the self way of being. An image a self-image causes a fixed way of being. This is one analogy. As God image from Abraham causes a fixed murderous way of being for believers. Okay? So, yes, zombie joke. You want to eat brains for Easter. I get it. But if we have an analogy, you can expand it out. So, what else do you know about the pathologos? Well, you know that there's a false analogy. False analogy linking the past to the present. If I spoke out about what I loved when I was a kid, my family would crush that. So I'm never going to approach that girl I like, because I don't want to have that crushed. That will limit you in expressing yourself. So if you know that, then your job is to fill it out down here. Is there a false analogy? In Abrahamic religions? Is it the killing son? Killing Abraham's son? Kill son? Kill others? Or kill what you love? Or kill what's most meaningful? Which would be your mind, which would be your mind, self, being, logos, and development, and spiritual development. So is that? Now we've got another one over here. A fixed way of being, and that fixed way of being limits and blocks spiritual development. Limits and blocks spiritual development through the logos. Development, which is the same limits and blocks. Spiritual development. But you can play. You can add anything you see about the pathologos. You can find its analogical equivalent to religion. Abrahamic religions in particular. They're the big ones. As our self-image gives a fixed way of being in our lives, causing our problems, our blocks and limits, our problems, so too, the God image of Abraham causes a fixed murder. Hey, you're never going to get Abrahamic people to stop killing people. You can't, unless you address the cause, the Abrahamic image of God. And just as there's a fake analogy that we have to address from our origin scene in dream analysis and midwifery to solve individual human problems, so too do we have to address the root cause of world conflict, the fake analogy that because Abraham killed his son, what he most loved, what was most meaningful to him, so too must Abrahamic believers, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, kill what they love, their own mind, self, being, logos, and development, and kill non-believers. You can't stop murderous people from being murderous unless you address the cause. And that will block our limits, our development as a species as well. So we can say this is individual problems to global problems. individual conflict or family conflict to cultural conflict. You can have fun expanding the analogy. But also we can wonder what's first. What's the higher of the two analogy? Would we have bought into this garbage if we had first realized through midwifery that this is a human quality? All human problems come from this. You don't have to have beliefs. You don't have to believe in Hegel and Nietzsche and have this psychotherapeutic model and that psychotherapeutic model and this opinion. No, it's fucking simple. It's universal and true for everyone. There is a fundamental false image of ourselves that we all get from childhood that chains us to the wall of the cave of shadows and beliefs. A false image of the self that causes a fixed way of being. False analogy from our past that blocks and limits our development. That's it. It's just that simple. And if we'd made that clear and not killed Socrates for making that clear, or if we didn't kill Socrates before he went to the effort to make it clear and write things down, would we have bought into these Abrahamic things? Or the ones that came after him at least? So is this the cause of this? Let's wonder about that. So, another banger of a paragraph, another significant thing for all of us to understand. Banger. Jesus. I would not have expressed it in such terms, nor do those followers of Abraham picture themselves in that way. Yeah, no joke, they don't. But I do see why you use that language to describe them. Conflict. I wouldn't have said that, but I can see why you said that. He's stuck. Very good, Jesus. You gave birth to just what I expected from you. Oh, wow.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. What? Wow.
He's given birth to something. That's a significant thing. And not only that, Socrates expected him. So there's a reason. There was a goal, a hypothesis Jesus would give birth, a goal to help Jesus give birth, and some steps or structure that Socrates had to go along to reach that goal, which means that Socrates must have himself freed himself from his false beliefs, because this is a high way of functioning. It's not just his own spiritual development that is unblocked. It's a high level of spiritual development that allows him to be a teacher to others, which implies that Socrates may have to go all the way through to this successful conclusion. And if our pathologos blocks block us from that high functioning, then it implies that maybe Socrates has gone through this process himself and he is free. That's a hypothesis we can carry as we continue to read. You gave birth to just what I expected from you. Putting the master that way offers me a way to explore another parallel. For now we can ask, what was ignored or added as it moved from Thomas? Clearly, since truth is what we seek, it would be important to also look behind the words and seek to identify what springs from these words. So, Jesus just gave birth to something. What was it? Well, he said, oh, I wouldn't say it that way, but I can see why you did. So he's seen something. It's still inconsistent with his self-image, so he can't completely make that jump, but at least he's seen it. Seen what? The underlying cause of the problems we suffer in culture, caused by Abrahamic beliefs, which have itself a false image of God from Abraham, and a false way of functioning from that, killing people that they carry as their fixed image of their self and their own fixed way of being in the present. Just like all human problems are caused by a false image of the self called the pathologos that keeps us in a fixed way of being that limits and blocks our own spiritual development. So we can understand the root cause of the majority of human suffering and conflict and murder, mass murder and war. And we can gain an insight into similarly individual problems, shedding light on both, and even ask the question, could the pathologos be the root cause that created the conditions for humans to accept such a terrible, sick image of self and God and way of being? Jesus has seen it, can't accept it because he's in conflict, and he has to accept the limit to be a son of Abraham, a child of Abraham, giving us a demonstration of what we defined so beautifully and wonderfully in the text. Defining what's most significant in our world, pure reason, no opinions, and having the most significant characters, Socrates and Jesus, giving us a demonstration of that which is most important. What a goddamn banger this book is. Oh my goodness. Where do we go from here? Find out next time in the next episode. Yeah, where did we come from? Thomas the twin. Where did he go? What happened after him? How did we get to where we are? Thank you so much for joining me. You can follow along on Twitch, on YouTube. You can join the Discord. You'll get a notification when we go live. You can find a link to the text below. And if you want to donate to the channel, there's a link to buy me a coffee beneath. And if you do, thank you and cheers. Thank you once again, and I'll see you in the next one. Noise. This button. See you in the next one.